This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, ideas, and interviews from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Head to mediasalesmastery.com to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. I'm your host, Jamie Wood. Our topic today, building better business acumen. You know, I've been having a lot of conversations recently around what selling media is going to look like in the next 12 to 24 months. My strong opinion, the market is going to become or continue to be extremely challenging. The people who possess a strong business acumen, in my opinion, will be the ones who prosper. So what is business acumen? Many people make the mistake of mislabeling financial literacy as business acumen. And so, you know, whilst knowing EBITDA, P&L, CPI, how to interpret financial reports, is a very desirable skill. True business acumen goes well beyond this. Now, HubSpot had a great article around the relationship between sales and business acumen. And they put forward this definition, which I think really encapsulates it for me. Business acumen is the ability to combine experience, knowledge, perspective, and awareness to make sound business decisions. It's the practice of good judgment and the capacity to consider a holistic, long-term view of organizational needs. Think about that in the context of what we do. We as media salespeople work within businesses and we sell primarily into businesses. Having a high degree of business acumen allows you to not only navigate your own employer, but also to have a high-level conversation with a business leader or a key decision maker. We often talk about moving from being that tactical seller to that trusted advisor and solution provider. Business acumen is the skill that underpins how we do this. Our guest today is Adam Lang. Adam is the director of Relativity Consulting, and they're the publishers of Fear and Greed, a daily podcast designed to set you up for success. Now, I'd highly recommend everyone listening right now, pause, subscribe to this podcast, and not mine, I'm talking about Fear and Greed, and then come back and have a listen. It's the only way to guarantee that you'll get access to a new episode every day at 6:30 a.m. Really excited about this topic, really excited to have a chat to Adam. It's going to be a great episode.
The first five.
Adam, welcome to the show.
Jamie, thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you. And you know, we were just talking prior to hitting the record button around Fear and Greed. Tell us a little bit about your experience across media and entertainment and what led to the creation of Fear and Greed.
Okay, so Jamie, I'm 51 years old, so I've been doing it for a while. I did a degree in economics and figured I didn't really want to use it strictly, so I got into the music industry. And from about 1993 to 2004, I worked with recording artists and songwriters. Then I moved to Network 10 in the mid-2000s till about 2007, where I worked within the sales team. And then to what was then Austereo, now Southern Cross Austereo, in 2007 until 2012. And I worked in that business as part of the sales team in airtime management, commercial airtime management, and then through to general manager and director of operations. And then I left in 2012 to become managing director of Fairfax Radio Network, which then merged with Macquarie in 2015 to become Macquarie Media, and became chief executive officer. So I left there in October 2019. That's 1 year ago. And in terms of Fear and Greed, really is that classic case of trying to find something and not being able to find it. So I got together with a couple of people who I really enjoy working with, and we created it. So the idea with Fear and Greed is that if you're in media sales or you're in any business, you're interested in Australian business or investing, what we wanted to do was give people a 20-minute listen where they could get all the business news they needed to know and an interesting interview each day. So we now get up at around 4 a.m. We write, record and publish by 6:30. And then we do some social media promotion on Fear and Greed, and then we start it all over again. So really it's been an incredible time, if I look back from 93 till now, from music industry to radio to television, and now in the digital world of podcasting.
It's unreal to hear that cross-section of experience you have, and you know, probably makes you the perfect guest to answer this next question.
I'll do what I can, Jamie.
Well, across your experience, so you've got something of a financial background. You've worked across media, entertainment, the record industry. I'm just curious for your perspective. So, in the context of media sales, what is good business acumen, and why is it so important for a media salesperson to develop?
Acumen is, I think, a great catch-all descriptor for so many skills. It's I don't know that there's an easy way to underpin it, but what I would say the factors that go into it, acumen, are essentially recognizing that business is genuinely about people. And I know that's cliche, but every single person, start with that personal acumen, that personal respect, empathy, and then really build on that the skills of listening and learning, because you think you can do, your research about a business, you look at the industry someone is in, you look at the business that you're talking to, and you try and develop your acumen about business. You try and look at them and have some empathy to what their trading context is and understanding their challenges. But it's really about your insight and your empathy into what they're going through. So first, I think acumen comes with an ability to listen to the person, respect the person, and really understand their trading environment and the challenges they have. It's then about using your own skills and filtering everything that you've heard and being able to talk to them in a way that they understand and that they genuinely feel you understand what they're talking about and that you're meeting their challenges. So I really think it centers around empathy, understanding your trading context, what you need to do, but also how that can benefit the person you're talking to. If I look back across my career, I think the best media salespeople that I've ever seen tend to combine that ability, the need to understand their clients and combine their skills and expertise, their media expertise, to offer great solutions to their clients and develop a long-term relationship. So, in essence, I think acumen starts with people, listening and understanding.
Media Sales Mastery.
It's fair to say that over the next 12 to 24 months, media salespeople are going to be selling into markets where their prospects and clients are going to have multiple priorities, they're going to have changing market conditions, and there's going to be complex business issues that need to be solved. For somebody selling media in 2020 and beyond, mate, what are some of the broader challenges that you might anticipate in the advertising market, and how might this impact the approach required by a media salesperson going forward?
So, look, I think I'm probably, neither cautious nor optimistic or pessimistic. But I think until we have a vaccine, it's just appropriate to be cautious about the outlook. So I think 2020 has been a hell of a ride, a roller coaster, exceptional. But I think that 2021 will be better, but I don't know that everything's going to get solved. So, as we head towards Christmas this year in our trading environment, where we're looking at finishing this year, October, November, December, usually a really healthy last quarter into that key retail trading period of Christmas and tourism and holidays over the new year, and look towards going back to school, to university, to work. The pattern's going to be somewhat different, and I don't know that we're going to have as an exuberant Christmas as we might have hoped. But looking ahead to the next year, I think we just need to be comfortable with that uncertainty. And I hope it doesn't last long. I genuinely do, but I think it might. I think if you tend then to look beyond the main sort of overall macroeconomic picture of being uncertain, I think it really serves to take an industry by industry approach without being, too much of an economist or too linear. When you're talking to a client, try and have an understanding of what the sector that they're in is going through. So some of the hardest sectors, like tourism, like higher education, like hospitality, those clients, market by market, are going to be in a different trading environment. You can then look at retail. Retail overall has done pretty well. If you're in Bunnings, there's a lot of home renovations. If you're doing groceries, that's really healthy. If you're not online, you've probably got a massive challenge. But the retail industry is broadly okay. Some are doing better than others, but broadly okay. Automotive, it seems that cars and people buying cars has really been diminished. So take a look beyond the macroeconomic picture of uncertainty and really look into the industry that your clients are trading in, the context of that industry, and then market by market. What's the nuance that each market is going through? For example, Western Australia, the economy's growing. It grew 1.3% in the June quarter. It's almost like there's no issue there. The virus is practically a non-issue. They've got people going to Optus Stadium in Perth, watching the football. It's incredible. But if you're in Victoria, in Melbourne, it's a very different trading context. Hopefully, some of those lockdowns will thaw out soon. Brisbane, Sydney, Adelaide, Hobart, all the different markets, metropolitan and regional, are all in different contexts. And I think if you can look just beyond the macro picture and try and drill into the industry and the market that those clients are trading in, it'll really help your understanding of the sorts of challenges that your clients are going into before they even the conversation begins.
It's a really good call out for WA. Office work is back to 99% of pre-COVID levels, which I just found astonishing. I mean, you think about it and it kind of makes sense because they're so isolated and they have the ability to, eradicate the virus effectively. But what I find really interesting about Adam and for people listening is, we were all hypothesizing on this virus is going to change the future of how we work and the office environment's no longer going to be relevant. And then you can kind of look to Perth and go, well, hang on a sec, like for all intents and purposes, they've kind of just returned to normal, which is kind of interesting. I think, again, it's important to look at that market by market level, as you sort of said, rather than looking at these broad national trends. And on that, I suppose continuing on that theory of sort of more micro level stuff, business acumen we know is a very powerful skill, as you mentioned earlier, sitting in front of a new client, doing an assessment of their business and its needs. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of questions that might underpin a new client discovery meeting? Something that a media salesperson could use to gain a more holistic and nuanced understanding of the client business and their challenge.
Sure. Look, I think it goes back to that personal empathy being critical here. You'll only get a person talking about themselves if they're comfortable, if they respect you, and they think it's a productive conversation. So really just remember the business is about people and really listen to that person and make that your focus and draw in as much as you can of what they're saying. I mentioned the homework on the industry, the company. Have a look at their competitors and whatever you can find out about the person you're meeting, it helps that person feel really listened to. Go into the conversation knowing as much as you can, about their company, their trading context, how long that person's been in the role, whatever their circumstances might be. They're all important because they all go into their personal bias and their decision making. Beyond that, which is a really important base of knowledge, I think for any business and for any person, it's again become a little bit cliche, but understand their reasons for doing things, their why. Why do they work where they are? Why do they do the role they do? What is the company and business to do? What's their mission and values? If you can understand those things, for example, the personal why, how they get into the role, why they do it, get them talking about themselves a little bit, and some conversation flowing, you might learn some really important motivations about their decision making. Ask again, why do their clients buy their product? Has that changed recently through this COVID period, or are they feeling like their clients are behaving differently? That can really underpin the marketing solutions that you might craft for that particular challenge. And as we approach the end of this year, start to ask them, if you haven't already, what they think their 2021 is going to look like. You've heard me talk about it. You'll have your own view. You will, Jamie, and people in the audience listening now will have their own view of what they hope and what they think will happen in 2021. But if you can get a better understanding of their 12 months ahead, you can really begin with that end in mind and work backwards to now with the options for the marketing solutions that you can provide.
What I love about what you're saying there, and it's sort of a bit of a theme that's been uncovered over the last probably 4 or 5 episodes, is this kind of shift from where we used to historically say sales is a numbers game. The more people you speak to, the more successful you'll be. And the shift, Adam, has gone to exactly what you're saying is, no, it's about really good targeting. It's about really good pre-work and research. It's about having a really good understanding so that when you have that finite opportunity to sit in front of a high value prospect, you don't burn it. You're there with everything in the armory ready to convert that to an opportunity. And I think it sort of lends to probably a shift we're seeing more broadly from the audience when I talk to people that reach out and listen to the podcast, where a lot of them are comfortable transacting with multiple small to mid-sized clients, right? Where they've got a direct relationship with a key decision maker. Let's talk about, the process of targeting those larger high value clients and maybe the adapted process required in that approach. When selling into a large and complex organization with a lot of stakeholders, how might a solid business acumen assist a media salesperson to just increase their chance of success?
Sure. Look, if I might, Jam, I'll just go back a little bit on
Sure.
on what you're saying before. I think there's an absolute merit in that volume and quality equation. The volume of calls you make, the volume of work you do, and the quality of work you do. They're both critically important, and everyone will have a subjective valuation of what volume and quality mean. But I think you're right. I think that people are less interested in the number of conversations. They're more interested in the number of quality conversations they can have to help make their business challenges easier. So, the days when you join a sales team and be handed the yellow pages and just start talking, they're gone. There is merit in finding someone, cold calling, but before you do, really understand their context before you jump in. And to answer your question now about the bigger companies, my experience, the principles of selling really remain the same. It's not always true, but the bigger the amount of money involved, the more people tend to be involved and the more process and tools tend to be involved in that decision making. And one of the great risks is, as more people become involved, it seems that objections get overweighted. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have 10 people involved in a decision. If one person expresses a query or doesn't look as well on an option as everyone else or turns it down, that seems to have more weight in bigger groups than perhaps pro rata suggests it should. So, to use that clumsy example, if 1 out of 10 talks it down, it seems to have a greater than 1 in 10 effect. And so the purpose of saying that is just to say how frail the bigger decision-making process can be along the way. And I think one of the things you've got to do is, acknowledging the higher value does not suggest that you put less effort in. It's just as much effort. You've got to really make sure that the stakeholders involved in that decision, you're close to them as much as you can be, that you understand their motivations, you understand their timelines for decision making, when you think their critical periods of consideration will be, like when their meeting schedule is going to be, when they're presenting back to a client. All those things are really important to understand. As that decision tree goes, know where the stakeholders are, and as much as you can, consider their view and how much you should be communicating with them to assure that your option's best placed as it can be in that process. So I guess the principles remain the same. The more you can inform yourself about the client, their challenges, and the people in the decision tree, the better you tend to be able to communicate and ensure that your proposal has the best chance. But in short, principles remain the same. It's actually more effort than you might think because of the dollars involved and just how contagious objections can be.
It's a really good point around that objection contagion. I love that phrase.
It may not sound very elegant, but it's an observation that I've seen happen so many times.
Well, it actually really reflects my experience as well, because I think what I found really interesting early on, starting out as a media salesperson and going for those enterprise sales with those bigger targets, not knowing who the stakeholders in the room were specifically in terms of their function. So, a procurement person? What are their unique challenges? What is their role in the organization? Where do they sit in the hierarchy? How much weight do they carry in that room? Who in this room out of these 10 people has the ability to completely derail the process just because they're having a bad day? And that's a pretty dramatic example, but having that level of organizational awareness.
It comes from experience, right?
It does, yeah.
You've seen it happen.
And I've learnt by failing over 11 years, but it's but it's definitely...
I've been in it for more, Jamie. I've learnt the same way.
Well, it's interesting though, because it sort of lends to the next question. You previous to what you're doing now, you're a CEO leading a large media organization. Let's talk about internal, right? So what role does good business acumen play internally for a media salesperson? And to give context, things like career advancement, being able to manage internal stakeholders, being able to actually properly articulate an issue at the coalface that can be then interpreted by somebody in the C-suite. What's been your experience with people with really good business acumen internally, and how has that helped them advance?
So I think probably something that I didn't expect and learned early and kept observing it was that sales teams are critical in so many ways. And I think one of the sort of early observations of media was sales teams tended to have the earliest evolution of a team focus, developing vision, developing culture, role playing in terms of client negotiation scenarios, a really good structure of meetings and budget planning and so on. So I think that for most sales teams, when you join a good media organization, you start to learn immediately by experience how to develop that acumen. So I think that's something that I guess within the media environment, respect that not all teams are run the same. Sales teams might be run differently, as they should be, but you're learning some skills that may well be unique in the business, and they are fabulous skills. So when you're considering a client externally, use all those skills internally. They are really, really useful. And, you want to get on with people. Respect, again, that the business is all about people. And treat your internal stakeholders much as you would a client. You're all, I know it's cliched again, but you are and should be all on the same team. That's the job of senior leadership, to ensure that you are functioning better as a whole than you are as a group of individuals. So if you can use those sales skills that you're inducted with, that you learn and get better at over time, use them as much externally as you do internally. And I think that will hold you in very good stead. Another way is that because you're engaging in the market, you are learning an immense set of knowledge, or getting an immense set of knowledge about clients in your market, about the industries they're in, about the suburbs and the environments that they're trading in, about their competitors, their personal motivations and what's important to them. So that is a tremendous set of knowledge, and you can't presume that salesperson to salesperson are all seeing the same thing. You're probably seeing similar things but not the same, and sharing that experience amongst each other is critical. But also anticipating that when it comes to your internal stakeholders outside of sales, they're not seeing that. They're not in the market in the same way. And so the knowledge that you have as a member of the sales team can be invaluable. For example, if you know an industry is in trouble and a client might be experiencing some financial difficulty, at the right time, having a chat with your finance team is the right thing to do, so that they understand in whatever market you're talking about, whatever industry you're talking about, that client is doing it tough and we're going to need to help them, or we need to watch certain things about their trading patterns. That finance team will come to regard you very, very highly about your engagement with them. So just as a small example of how you can engage. Another one would be that, again, with your sales skills and experience, when you're talking to clients, you're often talking to listeners. They're often not just listening for their ad, but they listen to the station and they buy the stations that they want to hear, or they buy the media that they want to see. Whether it's outdoor, on television, listening on the radio, or even in podcasting, they tend to pay more attention to the realms that they're buying. And so you can learn a great amount from those people as audience members. Even though they're clients first and foremost, you can learn a great deal of information from them as audience members. And that filtering back to your program teams or to your creative teams or to your media executives will be very, very useful. So I think if you look at it in that way, broadly speaking, that in sales, you've got an exceptional set of skills and experience. You're using that in market, but you can also use those skills and that experience internally just as well for the benefit of the company and indeed your career. And the more you get on with people, the more that you can provide valuable information to people and show that you're a team player, the higher regard in which you'll be held.
So really, I love that example you had around finance, just to really sort of hang on that one point. I think one thing we're very guilty of as media salespeople, and I've called this out on episodes before, is I've always been amazed at the dichotomy sometimes in good media salespeople where they can go out to market and be the most charming, charismatic, diplomatic, articulate, measured, individual that this client's ever seen, and then they come into the business and they're just complete tyrants, and they they throw their weight around, and they have a horrible internal reputation. And I've always just found it so interesting that people don't invest just as much time internally trying to build their internal reputation and profile. And look, arguably, it's always going to take work because a lot of the time there is, as you said, there's that misalignment in what the client needs and potentially what a big structure of a media organization is there to fulfill. So there's a lot of process conflict that has to be navigated through. But I just think that was a really great example there, Adam, of something so simple, but would be so impactful, is just to have that dialogue with a finance team to preempt an issue. That's going to elevate your standard media salesperson to being a bit of an A player internally in the organization very quickly, just those 1%ers.
Oh, absolutely. And I think just to reinforce it a little bit, you probably yourself as a salesperson, whomever is listening, that you're paying attention to your own media pretty closely. So the value that has back internally to your program, your creative, your teams that are focused on creating that content in the best possible way for the audience is probably not something that sales use all the time, but it works. And to have someone, whether it's radio, television, outdoor film, whatever, who can come to you and say, hey, this mattered to this audience member for this reason. It just shows you thinking of them. And that it shows also that you cared enough to tell them. And I think to your point around those people who might behave differently in different circumstances, when people see that, it can cause enormous damage to their credibility. If you get to know someone in a certain way and you think, oh, they're a great team player, they care, they're looking beyond just their own field and their own selfish interest. They're looking for a team performance. I want to work with them. Then you see something happen and it can wipe out an enormous amount of good work. So it's just not logical to behave that way. And, you'd hope to think that it was a rare moment and that those exceptions, you can acknowledge them, make good on them with the person that might be affected and build that relationship back again, because good relationships are honestly so worthwhile. You might not see the immediate benefit in your monthly budget, but it'll come, and it'll come in the medium to longer term.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, to round this one out, and it just kind of occurred to me when you were saying that, we do, in a typical week, as part of a sales process, we collect market intelligence, we do forecasts, we look to maybe sort of, I guess, just try to capture at a moment in time what the sentiment with our clients and customers, kind of is in that particular kind of context, and then feed that up the line. And I think a lot of media salespeople kind of miss the opportunity to really dive deep into that process. I think we do have the habit of kind of running at a pace and intensity where it's all about the next deal, the next revenue, what client issues coming in today. And we don't take the time to sit there and reflect and actually look at that competitive analysis and look at what the data's telling us and look at the trends. Go back and revisit, the past 6 weeks of reporting and see if you can pick out those nuggets that might actually provide some context for a mood or a sentiment that's happening with clients across a patch. That to me, I just think is so valuable, but something that's just often probably missed, in the day-to-day sales process. Would that be your sort of experience as well, mate?
I think it is, and everyone's at different levels at different times. But Jamie, we were talking just before we hit record, and just to reframe that a little bit, you're a parent and you're busy, and as am I. And sometimes you don't have to be a parent to be busy. You don't have to be a parent to be overwhelmed. It can happen at any time in your life, where particularly when there's pressure for whatever reason. And it's sometimes just really hard personally to get that time in your head for reflection. And so, if you can just sit and breathe every now and then and not just strictly look at anything, read anything, listening, just observe what's going on around you, whether it's consuming some media, listen to a podcast, watch something, or just read a book, sit and just meditate, whatever, you can tend to allow yourself to keep that power of observation up. It's something that goes, the more you're overwhelmed, the less observant you can tend to be. So the more you can observe what's going on around you, think, hey, actually, I'm just going to say something to someone. And it could be the most random of thing, but the mind is a wonderful thing and intuition can be developed. But if you have a presence, if you're in the moment and you're inclined to say something, good behavior, go and congratulate someone, even if it's not your business. I'm sure that very few people mind being complimented, and if it's something that you feel you need to question, don't presume that you've observed something correctly, but just go and ask them why something happened. Be really open-minded and express that as support, because, you really want to help your own powers of observation. You want to understand what's going on, but you also want to help your teammates. And it's just so easy to be overwhelmed. The same thing happens with clients, with other members of your team. So I guess just that recognition and something, I think one of the few benefits of aging is that I'm getting better at allowing myself that time for reflection and observation.
Yeah, such a great point to round that out.
I can't ask my sales manager that.
Adam, I want to jump to the listener submitted question this week, and this one is going to be right in your wheelhouse.
Okay.
I was almost ready to just write back and just tell them to subscribe to Fear and Greed, because it kind of solves their problem. But look, it came through on the website. Name has been withheld, but the question is, I sell a very niche media product which has a long sales cycle. I won't go into specifics of why this is the case, but for context, it can take 6 to 12 months from my first contact with an advertiser to them potentially coming on board and running a campaign with us. One thing my sales manager drills into us is that we need to keep in touch with clients regularly, so we are top of mind during the internal sales approval process. My sales manager says I should always have something of value to share when I call, so it's not just a standard follow-up call. He suggested things like reading financial news and calling to share something interesting I saw. Does this actually work? And if so, what am I supposed to actually get across that would be worth sharing? I don't really understand much about financial markets. So that one to me just feels like it's very much in I suppose a problem that a lot of the Fear and Greed audience are having.
You've selected it purpose-built, haven't you?
Well, and for context, and I need to disclose this and apologise. This person submitted this question 4.5 months ago, so we're taking our time, but it felt
it's still relevant, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is absolutely is.
I've had across my career, personally, professionally, sales cycles can be incredibly long. I've had friends in property or in infrastructure, such as building railways. Those are years long, and I think whether it's a short-term media sale or a longer-term infrastructure sale, so many of the principles remain the same. And I hope we've touched on the answer within the conversation we've had today. But look, I think that the sales manager in this case is right. Having something of value to share when you can and call, keep close. that's all true. And I think probably if I can interpret the question a bit better, or a bit more, I should say, is to say that it's probably about how they do it, and what are some of the tools to get some of that information and then filter it to contextualize so it's actually relevant to the client and not just trite information that they don't need to know. A call for the sake of a call, or trying to talk about something that you really don't understand, because that won't benefit anybody. So look, indeed, that is why one of the many reasons why we created Fear and Greed. It's 20 minutes, in the mornings that can facilitate that information for you. And not just the information, but it gives you the context to understand the why. Not just why a share price went up and down, or someone lost money, or why there's a royal commission or the US election, but not just the data, not just the information that happened, but a bit of the why. And that, I think, is the critical part of anyone remembering information, is the story around it. We're human beings. So let's just say, someone you're talking to is in medical supplies and it's a 6 to 12 month sale. What you may not know about that industry very much, but you can certainly, whether Fear and Greed or other media, that there's a pandemic. That supply chains are disrupted. For example, we all heard about how masks were in short supply and medical equipment wasn't enough to be the front line. So, just to draw on one example of a medical client, you'll hear in the news something about that industry that'll be relevant. Or if it's infrastructure, if you're sort of in Sydney, the long journey that the light rail took to be built and just how controversial it got, people love a bit of gossip, So, if there's something in their industry that's happened like that and you're interested in it, chances are they will be too, So, and what does that mean for the campaign that you're talking about? What does it mean for their training environment? And just to share that with them. And it's often, really easy to ask themselves about how they're trading in a month, a quarter, a year, based on something that you've picked up that's happening. So I think it goes back to what we're saying, that the Acumen question that you started with, Jamie, is a ripper. I don't think I have a good definition for Acumen, but I think the foundations of it are empathy, respect, listening and learning. And if you can keep those things in mind when you're reading or ingesting or listening to a podcast called Fear and Greed about the news, use that to think, I've got one of my clients who I can talk to about that, and make a note of it. Remember to do it, because the best ones can often come spontaneously. They're genuine. You've had a thought about that client, use it, take it. So, and if not, use your CRM, use your customer relationship management database. When was the last time you communicated, called, emailed, but particularly called or met with that person, and know that you should keep that, you shouldn't keep those conversations too far apart, and that there's always something to talk about, whether it's their personal interests in sport or the industry they're trading in or the market they're in. There's always something to talk about. So I agree with that sales manager's advice, something of value to share. So it's not just a call or a follow-up, but I think what I've tried to do is help that, what to talk about and why. I hope that answers the question.
No, I think you've nailed it. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's all in the delivery. And I think a lot of salespeople get told that by sales managers. I'm sure in my career, I've been guilty of it too. I think the challenge is for a lot of people starting out, it's how do they interpret and translate that direction into a specific set of sales actions that doesn't come off feeling contrived. And so the way that you've positioned that, I think, is perfect. And the only additional thought I'd add to that is that we probably want to remove sometimes this mental barrier that we need to be presenting ourselves as the absolute experts to clients all the time. If you've got a genuine question or you're intrigued about something in their category, you'd be surprised how effective it is to pick up the phone and ask them for their opinion on something. I wonder whether sometimes, Adam, like picking up the phone and just going, hey, you're in this market, you're in this sector. I've heard this headline. what does this actually mean? Like, I specialize in media. That's my domain. I don't know your industry. What's your perspective on this? Sometimes that actually can absolutely, lead to some really powerful dialogue, and it doesn't require you to be well rehearsed. Now, you don't want to call every client and and ask them a dumb question, but sometimes that can actually really open up a great relationship as well.
No, I completely agree. It's a great suggestion. I think, it really helps, again, business being about people. Don't just look at it as a campaign or a transaction. Look first and foremost at the person that you're talking to as a person, and then in the business they're in, and the person that got business challenges that needs to meet them, and marketing is one of them. And so to your, I think, excellent point is, find out more about their business and don't treat it as just a transaction. Ask them something. It's a level playing field. You need to learn from them, hopefully as much as they can learn from you. And I think that's great advice.
Well, I think this has been a great episode. We've got a lot for people to kind of take away and unpack. I guess the final question I'd have for you is there any one sort of parting thought you'd like to leave the audience with around the topic of building better business acumen? Maybe something that they might be able to take away and apply immediately as they go into the next couple of weeks.
So, look, I think for anyone that's kind of swayed away from the path, for want of a better expression, remember that you're talking to people. It's not just a transaction. And that will be particularly important in this trading environment because the uncertainty leads us all probably to overthink things about what's next and when a vaccine might come or things might improve. I generally don't think the pandemic will change everything, but it's definitely quickening a lot of evolution. And where that will end for every industry is not completely clear. But the more that you can inform your acumen, the empathy, respect, listening and learning, keeping close to your clients, treating them as people with challenges to solve, the better your relationships and your trading will be.
Great summary, Adam. Now, I'm not going to let you leave until you give us a bit more information on fear and greed. So, okay. Tell us a little bit about where you guys are on the journey and, for anyone in the audience, how they can help you guys get the word out about what you're doing.
Sure. So thank you. We started on the 18th of May and I reckon some of those first episodes were pretty lumpy, but we'd done 2 weeks of off-Broadway before that. I think, when you've done a show a day, you learn pretty quickly. And we're now doing 13 episodes a week. So we do a 6:30 edition Monday to Friday. We do a weekend wrap on a Saturday, and we do a Sunday feature interview. We then started on Mondays the week ahead with economist Stephen Koukoulis on a Monday, and it's about what data is coming. So whether it's consumer confidence, business confidence, the Reserve Bank is meeting, employment data, all these really big macroeconomic things. It's, 5 minutes to tell you what's coming up so you get a heads up of what's in the week ahead. And then we do a market wrap every evening for 5:30 about what's happened on the investment market, the stock exchange. So, May 18 to today has evolved a lot. We did, in our first month, we did 60,000 downloads. In July, 75,000. In August, we did 94, and then September we did 124,000, and we're growing ahead of that this month, and that's for us really important. We've got an audience target we want to get to. Growth is good, and I think, in any small business, it's just the 3 of us pumping out 13 episodes a week, including 6 interviews. There's a lot of information there, all condensed down to any audience member that wants to listen. In 20 minutes on your way to work, Monday to Friday from 6:30 a.m, you can get it there. And, even if you don't listen every day, just try and listen a few times a week or even the weekly wrap on a Saturday, and you'll get so much information that helps you in your trade, to learn about what's going on in the economy and in different industries. So, look, we're doing well. There's 3 of us working hard and enjoying it immensely. And we hope to continue for a long time.
Well, mate, I'm a massive advocate of it, and I would really encourage anyone listening to go and subscribe. It takes a lot of effort to make a podcast. I think, I'm committing to one a fortnight, and a lot of people think you just turn the mics on and just kind of freeform it, but there's a lot of work in the back end in structuring the episodes, in doing the research. So, to be putting out that volume of content and for it to be as informative and well packaged as it is a real testament, Adam. And I said to you offline, my only criticism is that I didn't think of the idea first, because it is a ripper.
Well, that's a lovely compliment, Jamie. So thank you.
Well, look, I'm going to put a link, if it's okay, Adam, to Fear and Greed, to the website. I'm going to put a link to your LinkedIn profile as well in the show notes of this episode, for the audience to just be able to go and connect with you and to subscribe to Fear and Greed. Mate, thank you very much for your time. Really, really great to have someone with your experience kind of distill down what is a very complex and broad topic into some really key takeaways. So thank you again, mate. We hope to have you on soon, and best wishes with Fear and Greed moving forward.
Thank you, Jamie. I think this is a great initiative of yours. I'm very pleased you invited me on the show, so thank you. And I hope it goes well for you. I think it's a terrific tool for people to listen to, not just in sales and not just in media. So really well done.
Well, thank you, mate. I'm not going to share how many downloads I've got, because they pale in comparison to yours. But yeah, no, I'm very passionate about this, and I think it probably, reflecting on Fear and Greed, I created this because I wanted it myself.
Good on you.
And so
That's a great
I just hope
reason.
that. Yeah, well, and it's similar to yourself, mate. So I hope that for both of us, that people understand that these are independent initiatives. Help us get the word out. Like it, subscribe it, rate it. Every little bit helps at the moment. So, Adam Lang, thank you for your time. I'm going to let you go and prep for the afternoon report and tomorrow's 4 a.m. alarm clock. But thank you for being a guest today, mate.
Jamie, thank you very much again. Have a good day.
You've been listening to Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. Head to MediaSalesMastery.com to help pick the topic, guide the show, and don't forget to subscribe to receive new episodes each week.